Welcome back to CareCast, the podcast from Caresoft, the trusted government IT solutions provider. Subscribe to get the latest technology updates in the public sector. I'm Anthony Jimenez, your host from the Caresoft production team. On behalf of Verge Technologies, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around Verge's SentientDB. Jimmy Job, CEO of Verge Technologies, Mohit Narayanan, co-founder of CoreTech, and Fernando Labastida, founder of the Viral Genius Framework, will discuss how SentientDB is changing multi-cloud enterprise IT management.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Fernando Labastida, your moderator for today. Very excited to have Mohit and Jimmy here, and they're going to talk about a topic that is really on everybody's roadmap these days. It's managing database operations in real time with automation in a multi-cloud world. What they're going to discuss is, first of all, they're going to go over IT management trends. There's really some really interesting, exciting changes going on in that area. And then observations on the enterprise landscape. Then they're going to really kind of dig into the issues related to the enterprise disconnect, right? And they're not on the same page as the CSPs, okay? And then talking about the future today with Verge Technologies. Let's just get into a little bit about what Verge Technologies does, right? Verge Technologies builds intelligent IT products for the enterprise. The flagship product is SentientDB, which manages all and controls all databases across the enterprise footprint within and across all cloud services, right? So it eliminates CSP silos and vendor lock-in, AI-driven secure database mobility, and then what we really truly are pioneering here is true cloud convergence. And I know that Jimmy and Mohit are going to get into that. But in terms of the discussion, what we're seeing as far as IT management trends, Mo, if you could speak about the key things that you're seeing with companies moving as quickly as they can towards modernization, especially in the federal sector, and the current push to reduce costs and to raise productivity in IT management trends.
Thanks, Fernando. Hi, everyone. This is Mohit Narayanan. I am one of the co-founders of CoreTech. Spent the last 20 years building and working with innovative solutions across public sectors and private sectors. My experience has been mainly in the federal sector, transforming how the customers manage data, secure infrastructure, and then also scaling operations, right? At CoreTech, we focused on AI-driven automated solutions that really help reduce operational friction for the customer and in turn enhance performance. Some of the agencies that we worked on and we'll talk about today is Department of Agriculture, Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and a few DoD agencies. I'm excited to join this conversation with Verge, and I've worked with SentientDB for a long time. I want to explore how the intelligent platform is reshaping the real-time database operations in the space, right? I want to talk a little bit about IT management trends, and Jimmy will pitch in on some of these areas, I'm sure. Let's talk about challenges so far, right? In this current environment, the agencies are under constant pressure to really modernize legacy systems, ensure they have the right personnel with the right skill set, reduce cost, and at the same time, really increase productivity and responsiveness. But the reality is there's a lot of silos, right? Many still operate across fragmented, outdated architecture. And this is with limited visibility and manual processes. With all this, now add in the complexity of managing multiple cloud providers, each with their own tools, service level agreements, and security models. This is one of the reasons why the adoption has been really slow and risk prone. The way, as someone once told me, that this is almost like managing multiple cloud providers is like managing employees that speak all different languages, but there's no translator in the room, right? So that's the kind of analogy.
Yeah.
But again, I think with all these challenges, modernization still needs to take place and is imminent, right? So what are the customers looking for? I want to point to the Executive Order 1471 that was released, where agencies are, looking to build on commercially viable products instead of building custom solutions, right? So in order to get these new age technologies, right, agencies are enabling a new round of application database migrations to the cloud from these legacy data centers or proprietary data centers. These initiatives are refreshing, but it comes with its own challenges, infrastructure, applications, and databases, right? The goal is to really improve business operations, reduce hosting and operations costs, right? Once the projects are completed. Well, one good example from our USDA customer is, we have a major event that we're driving towards in 2027. This requires them to refresh the databases, make sure that applications are have all the bells and whistles so that they can provide cutting edge services to their customers. And we are looking at multiple databases, right? Some very legacy databases, some new databases, and these are all coming from data centers into a multi-cloud environment. How do we make that happen? So we'll dig a little deeper into that. But finally, I want to stop where cannot stop talking about all this without cost and budget issues, right? That has been the reinforcing thing from the beginning of 2025. This has been an issue for many years, but I think it has become more significant over the last year. So that has definitely been a challenge. And this is where I think intelligent platforms like SentientDB can come into play. Right? Over to you,
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Yep, appreciate it, Mo. Yes, we're seeing at Verge, our customers are seeing exactly the same thing. There's lots of cost and budgetary pressures. Those don't seem to be going away. They seem to be getting worse. It's kind of like do more with less, which typically means we need to automate the management processes. We need to bring some sort of intelligence to how we manage IT so we can reduce touch labor and at the same time build more resilient systems that can manage within a particular compute or cloud environment and then across cloud environments. As we think about modernization and we think about the fact that most modernization efforts today are incremental, they're not like a big bang and all of a sudden everything's in the cloud, right? So people are modernizing their database vendors and their databases as well as their applications so that number one, they'll run in the cloud. The architecture is compatible with cloud computing, and that they're taking that and they're moving incrementally into the cloud portions of their infrastructure until they get it all done, right? And so one of the things that we feel is important when we were building SentientDB is being able to manage both of those environments concurrently, right? So managing the existing legacy environment and managing the new environment to allow the enterprise or the agency to be able to then move their database assets from one environment to the other environment with no downtime and be able to do that seamlessly at any time they want to do it, right? Being able to help, if you would, to assist in that modernization effort as they're incrementally the changes are added and allow them to run more and more of their applications and databases in a new environment. I think that that coupled with the fact that the pressures on and needing more automation, needing less touch, kind of goes hand in hand.
So, Jimmy, you and Mo talk about some of the technologies that you see that will significantly change the way enterprise IT management is done. If you could talk us through that.
Yeah, be glad to kick that off. And Mo, feel free to absolutely come in at any time and add to this. So we're seeing a lot of enterprises today that are operating in what I'm going to call a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environment, where some of their, let's say, database assets are in proprietary data centers. Some of them are in the likes of AWS or Azure or Google or Dell or any one of 500 others scattered around the globe. but they have one business process that then they're trying to take all of these specific compute environments, or particular, I'm going to call compute nodes or cloud service providers, and integrate all of that into their business process, and then be able to move their data across the enterprise footprint as they need to in order to run their operations. And so the degree of complexity starts to kind of go out through the roof, right? And that cloud environment, right, is across a distributed footprint. I mean, within the United States, a lot of people tried early on in the cloud migration thrust to all get all in one particular cloud service provider, like an AWS or an Azure. But their distributed footprint, there wasn't an AWS or an Azure at every street corner where they happened to have a need to turn up their facilities or need to collect data as part of their process. And so you needed to turn up local and regional service providers in order to be able to service their entire footprint. And then once you did that, well, then, okay, then how do I get from Shreveport? Well, I've had to turn up something in Shreveport locally. How do I get that back into my main core processing that's in Denver? And how do my company headquarters get the information they need that is in New York, right? So, I mean, and then once you step off put your foot in the water and step off the coastal United States, and you go to Europe or you go to Asia, that starts to get even more complicated. There's less of a ubiquitous service provider that you could pick, right? So then it becomes an exercise across your enterprise of trying to get data and database information from all your different points of collection to much fewer points of processing, to storage, to access for your teams, right? You say, well, how can I reduce the complexity? How can I reduce the downtime? How can I start to apply the same performance and security policies to all my database assets, wherever they are? How can I get one view of my assets, right? And that's both a vertical view within a particular silo or service provider, and then across. How can I manage within and across all those environments as if they were in one virtual data center? That was the concept we had when we built SentientDB, right? To be able to manage in a hybrid cloud environment, being able to, whether your main processing was in the United States or whether it was scattered across the world, whether you needed to do offsite replication, backup, orchestration, move a database from London to Tokyo every day at 10 a.m., whatever you needed to do around database management to support your operations, we wanted in one platform so that you could apply the same policies to every database that was hosted in your enterprise, irregardless of service provider, irregardless of the hardware it was hosted on, irregardless of any of those boundaries or restrictions that typical service providers will put in place, right? We also thought that what's needed in being able to manage on this scale is intelligent IT management. In other words, using AI to predict issues of workload, to predict performance issues, and then to be able to not only monitor, right, not only alert, not only report, but take action to correct, resolve, or mitigate that workload or performance issue before it happens. Predict it in the future, take action to resolve it before it manifests itself and database falls over or you have an outage of some kind. So we're seeing AI definitely in our products and across the industry using more and more AI to help manage and help predict outcomes of issues that have to do with that application or that database workload, how well it's performing, and how well it's performing in real time at runtime when it's processing data and being able to take action without taking the database or the application down, right? And so we're seeing AI starting to play a more important role. We're starting to see people enhance just that monitoring, reporting, and alerting, right? Which usually tells you that something went wrong after the fact, right? After it's down, and being able to forecast and correct it, right? As it's running. I believe in the next 5 years that we will see this prevalent across the industry. Intelligent IT management, being able to manage without a lot of human intervention, being able to fix problems before they happen, being able to react to issues as they're happening, to be the standard, not the exception that it is today, but the actual standard. And whether it's our company, Verge Technologies, or somebody else's company, I believe that that is the future. And in 5 years, that's probably going to be the standard. So we happen to be first in market, and we're hoping that a lot of other platforms and vendors will follow. Mo, did you have
Yeah,
anything?
I totally resonate with whatever you're saying, Jimmy. I think I've been working with SentientDB for a long time now, and it's a great example of whatever what you mentioned now is a great example of the out of the box product, right? That has all these capabilities, managing databases across the enterprise, and really AI based. So it's self managing, self healing, and in a unified management approach, right? And that's
Yeah.
most important now. On top of the cost, we're also dealing with a lot of domain knowledge being lost in the agency. So we want to make sure that there is a unified management approach that is across the board, that you can be trained for all the employees and contractors, right? And eventually, what's the goal is to really make sure that the maintenance is, the lights are on, the possibility of eliminating any kind of downtime is reduced or none. So that those are the main things to,
Right.
on top of cost and resilience goals. That's where this product actually helps.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mo. Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing more people using our product not only for the automation and the resilience improvements and fault tolerance improvements across all of their enterprise, but we're seeing more and more people use our product to actually help them do zero downtime maintenance. When you think about maintenance and you think, well, okay, I've got a maintenance window, I've got to take this server down, or I've got to take this database down, I got to do this, I got to do that in the maintenance window, and I hope it works the way we think it will, and then we got to bring it back up and synchronize everything again and get it going. If you think about, well, what if you could just auto migrate that database to a Swing server, do all your maintenance on that server, migrate it back, and never have miss a single transaction, never have a second of downtime, never have end user impact, and never having to take that maintenance window to begin with, right? So we're seeing people think of innovative ways to use the product that we hadn't thought of even initially, but now that they're using it that way, they can really reduce maintenance windows. They can really reduce the downtime that their particular customers are resisting, right?
Well, this is fantastic. And, I really think that you all are on to something here in terms of actually generating or designing a brand new industry category here. In terms of discussing the IT landscape and some of the capabilities that are needed today and, the evolving enterprise cloud services needs, Jimmy and Mo, can y'all cover what you see today and how that needs to change?
Talk a little bit about the current landscape, right? I think, we have hybrid architectures, right? We have a blend of on-premise, public cloud, private cloud, depending on where you're dealing with. There's edge computing, right? So there's a lot of multi-cloud fragmentation. The leaders in the space, obviously AWS, Azure, followed by Google, coming up very fast. But again, each with their unique tools, interfaces, service level agreements, compliance controls, right? So, and then there is a whole section of legacy system entanglement, the way I call it,
Yeah.
because I call it entanglement because many of these mission critical apps are still run on legacy infrastructure, which is very risky. At the same time, we need to keep the lights on. We don't want to end up on the Washington Post or any other news
Yeah.
agency. I make sure that that all this is actually having limited flexibility and scalability. And then the other two pieces are security and the data part, right? Security and compliance measures, huge, constant demand for FISMA, FedRAMP, zero trust, and CDM compliance, right? So that's as part of it. And then from a data standpoint, real-time data processing analytics are no longer optional. Right. In
Right.
this world of AI-driven data insights, it is essential for data decision making, especially in the
Right.
crisis of operational environment. Now, that all being said, what needs to be done, right? So we need a unified multi-cloud visibility and control, right? Again, it's like we want to make sure that there's a single pane of glass, right? Everyone loves a single pane of glass to orchestrate, monitor, and optimize workloads across all
Right.
CSPs, right?
Right.
Then the self-managing, self-healing infrastructure. Automation is no longer a bells and whistles. It's a necessity now, right? These platforms, these AI-driven platforms, needs to detect, predict, and resolve issues without human intervention, or at least
Yeah. Or
very
downtime.
close to
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing is the policy. Yeah, I think that is a huge piece of that because dynamic policy-driven workloads are very important so that you can move these workloads seamlessly across environments because
Yep.
that is one of the biggest things we want to make sure that it covers performance, cost, security, and demand, right? So I think that's the thing. And then finally, the security frameworks, security, real-time enforcements of these controls, right? Making sure there is automation involved, embedded compliance controls, automated logging, right? Encryption, role-based access, so that we are aligned with the zero trust architecture, elastic performance scaling, right? You should be
Yep.
able to scale automatically in case if there is a disaster or a surge and any sort of seasonal workloads, right? So I think these are no longer optional or nice to have things. These have become stable stakes, right? So
Yes.
that I'll stop there and then Jimmy, go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Mo. Those are almost becoming your ticket to play, right? Yeah, I mean, whether you're successful or not, I don't know, but you got to have that in place to play the game, right? You got to be able to have the automation. You got to be able to scale workloads within an environment and in cross environments, right? One of the things we have seen is that people that are, let's say, operating proprietary data centers, and they need to be able to, they've got a workload that's increasing that was unpredicted. They need to be able to scale out capacity immediately. That's hard to do without some downtime, in most cases. If you don't have the resources, if you don't have the power, if you don't have the things you need within that proprietary data center, then I need to go outside my proprietary data center because I still need that workload to work, right? I still need to process that workload. Platforms such as SentientDB allow you to infinitely scale out outside the proprietary data center. So you could go to AWS, turn up 3 servers on demand, cluster that workload from your proprietary data center across to AWS, run that workload, and then when the workload diminishes, start scaling back until you're back in your data center. So it allows you an elastic processing bandwidth, if you would, to manage those workloads within or across different environments as you need to, in order to ensure that it's resilient, that it's fault tolerant, that you don't run off the rails and have downtime because you can't handle the load. And so being able to automate those kinds of management really makes a big difference in your SLAs. It makes a big difference in being able to accomplish your mission, and makes a big difference as your customers view, right, what you're doing. We're seeing, if you look at the industry analyst, Gartner today is saying that the average enterprises use between 4 and 7 different service providers, right, in order to service their distributed footprint, right? And you say, wow, that's a lot of different tools, that's a lot of different costs, a lot of different service levels and complexity to integrate then those 4 to 7 different service providers back to your core business processes, right? Being able to orchestrate that data across your business processes, being able to move and migrate databases to the points where they need to be secondary and tertiary processed in order to get additional information for your operations group, right? That complexity, right, is to me one of the things I think needs to be to mitigate that complexity, right? And we can do that through automation. We can do that through AI, and we can do that in a way that gives you 100% transaction consistency across your entire enterprise. I think the time is now for those tools and platforms to become available and to be able to have a platform that can manage those assets. And Mo mentioned this before, the self-managing and self-healing. If we think about a policy-driven management platform, and we think about being able to put policies in place that say, if this happens, then do this. If memory utilization is above 90% for the next 10 minutes, move this database to a larger server, or split this workload across 3 servers in order to make sure all your resources are balanced again, right? Being able to take action outside of human intervention just based on policy in order to resolve, mitigate issues before they happen, right? Don't wait that 10 minutes, right? You can take the action, solve it, get the optimization of your performance back across all of your assets. Fernando, I think, we've talked a lot about management of IT, and we've talked about kind of what it needs to be in the future. We've talked about the problems, but in today's IT world, if we think about, well, what does management really mean in a multi-cloud environment today, right? I mean, kind of what's the state of the practice out there, right? And typically, what it does, I'll say what it means and what it doesn't mean. Typically, what it means is that you have single cloud environment management for every cloud or compute environment where your enterprise assets exist, right? So you have a cloud management environment for AWS, and you have another one for Azure, and one for Google, and one for 500 others, right? All of those have separate tools. They're managed separately with separate cost, QoS, and capabilities, right? And UIs that you've got to go learn. Typically, management means only monitoring, alerting, and reporting, right? That something is going to go wrong, right? And in many cases, that reporting kind of comes down after the fact. Well, it's down. So yeah, I'm reporting it's down. We're seeing that monitoring and reporting in different cloud environments are mostly saying that, well, your database is kind of operating or like this. And, those assets are in red, green, or yellow to show you that, but they don't provide details of what needs to be done. And of course, they're not going to do any action to go correct it, right? They're telling you that there's a problem, right? And that you ought to get up and go figure it out. And that those systems that are providing migration, workload scaling, replication, backup, failover, that each cloud service provider has, number one, are not intelligent. Or number two, they're not automated. And number three, they're not integrated. In other words, there's no glue that holds all of those different tools together in a platform that allows you to automate those things for the management of those databases, right? That's kind of the state of the practice today and what's available. Now, what management typically does not mean in today's environment is kind of the flip of that. It doesn't mean that your database assets are actually being managed in real time, live at runtime, while workloads are running, or that any automated actions are taken to prevent, resolve, or mitigate performance or workload issues, right? It typically does not mean that, right, in today's environment. It typically does not mean that there's any capability to provide true management visibility and actions vertically within a cloud and horizontally across different cloud environments that does not require downtime and restarts. And so if we think about the fact that of where we are and we think about where we need to go as an IT industry and what things we need to put in place that will reduce the cost, that will lighten the load and the complexity of doing modernization, that will allow enterprises to be able to move and manage assets in a unified or federated management model within and across all of those compute environments as if they were in one virtual data center. That's really what it's needed today as far as management. And that's what we have put in place, our vision for SentientDB. Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, so great answer, Jimmy. I think one of the things that I want to reinforce is, well, actually, two things. One is policy-based automation, right? Making
Right.
sure, because we want to automate, we want to automate, we want to automate. However, there is some governance behind automation.
Yeah.
So routine tasks, patching, scaling, backup, but that no matter where the asset resides. So that's has to be driven by the policy. And then
Yeah.
the second part is the security and compliance enforcement, right? Applying consistent security policies and audit controls across all environments. And we're not duplicating these things per cloud, right? So you don't want
Right.
to do that. And without all these things, you're juggling. You're always going to have fragmented leads into inefficiency, compliance gaps, higher cost, and operational risk, right? So, and that's where I think SentientDB, brings that, where you're treating disparate systems as one integrated system, right? You're
Right.
complying with the security policies of the customer, driven by automation, but you're applying intelligent policy enforcement, and overall making sure that there's mission focused performance. So that's
Yeah.
where just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mo. Yeah, I'd add one other thing and that's as far as meeting your customer service levels, right? Software service levels. If you think about SLAs and you think about, well, gosh, for every process or every class of database and every class of application, my service levels are different. How do I manage that? How do I ensure that what I've got running in AWS is going to meet the same service level as what I have in my proprietary data center, because it's the same process, right? It just happens to be I've got part of it running in AWS and part of it running in my proprietary data center, right? And so what we've been able to put in place is an SLA compliance engine, right? That takes into consideration what your SLA is and then provides that policy base to immediately go address that SLA from a compliance standpoint. Let me give a couple examples. So if you had a class of databases, or let's say a database, just for simplicity's sake, that was absolutely critical to your business, right? It couldn't go down no matter what. I mean, its SLA is, I'm making this up, is 5 seconds a year or something, right? And so you say, oh, all right. Well, when you pull that into the inventory and start managing that, knowing what that SLA is, right? Then you would immediately go out and start replicating that database to other points in your infrastructure, right? So that you end up with a master configuration that allows you, if one node goes down, the next one goes up, the next one. So by doing that, you're starting to get a handle on the management of that SLA so that it essentially can't go down, right? But conversely, if you have a database that, let's say, you were using to run your quarterly results, sort of quarterly sales results or something, and it didn't need to be up, but once every 90 days, right? Then of course you wouldn't want to go to the expense of doing an active kind of scenario. What you would really want to be able to do is replicate and back up that database so that if it ever went down, you could restore it within that 90-day window and still meet your SLA on that database. So it gives you the flexibility to put policies in place around different classes of databases, different nodes, different parts of your business processes, and to ensure that you're always going to meet your service levels, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is fantastic information, guys. Jimmy, Mo, it seems that there's a disconnect between the services that enterprises need and that service providers actually offer out in the marketplace. Can you all speak a little bit more to this disconnect and how it can be addressed?
I'll give you another analogy. It's like buying tools from 5 different hardware stores, right?
Yeah.
Each with its own type of screw, and then trying to build one structure.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it becomes complicated,
Good
right?
enough.
So, a unified vendor agnostic platform that's where we're aiming towards, right? That offers cross cloud orchestration, right? Monitoring and compliance enforcement, right? This is where I think SentientDB excels is to really help in that area, is removing that abstract infrastructure complexity, right? And then bringing in more customer based and outcome based automation, right? So again, goes back to self-managed, self-healing databases, auto scaling processes, services. So whatever the current CSP doesn't think it's our job to do this, this is where we excel, right? This is let's get real, right? The CSP has their own business model that does not really support cloud integration and cloud convergence. That's not their objective. So managing these clouds as one cloud and moving the databases across these clouds, that's where the challenges arise. CSPs also make revenues when you're in their cloud and not their competitors' cloud. So make sure that we as customers of the CSPs have that ability to cross support each other and also move it to the most efficient, not just cost efficient, but most efficient for the application, right? So that's where the SentientDB brings in the quals.
Thank you, Mo. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, it's what Mo was talking about is the fact that your enterprise may go across AWS and Azure and Google and 3 or 4 others, but those are pretty much silos in themselves, right? They don't make, as Mo was saying, they don't make revenue unless you're in their cloud, right? And the people in AWS are certainly not going to manage the enterprise assets that happen to be in Azure or vice versa, right? So they're going to stay to their cloud and say to their silos. And so what's needed is the ability to manage across that, so you have a single view of that asset, how it's performing, and what you can do to optimize its ability to do what you need it to do, right? At this particular service level you do. Enterprises need, I think, consistent management. They need policies and tools across all their assets with SLA assurance and as little downtime as possible. They need to be able to manage their operations wherever their footprint lands, and they need seamless integration within and across all their different compute environments to manage their IT assets in a federated or unified management model where assets, processing, and workloads can be managed as if they were all in a single virtual data center. That's where we need to get to. I think that some of those factors are starting to change, or at least I can see the beginning of that change. Let me say that. And we see more discussion about the need to manage in hybrid multi-cloud environments and to reduce complexity in their business processes. This means less downtime and cost for managing those assets. I'm seeing a lot more coverage of these topics from industry analysts such as the Gartners and the Forresters and others that are starting to track products introduced in and for multi-cloud space, and certainly seeing more and more AI-enabled products that are coming into the market, such as SentientDB. There's not many, right? But we're starting to see that people are talking about it. They're starting to come on in a limited fashion. In the last 6 months or so, I've had the opportunity to speak with several major cloud service providers, such as the AWSs and Azures of the world. And many of these are trying to decide what hybrid cloud could mean to their business model, to their current siloed business model, and how that they can make revenue from offering multi-cloud services, right? I think that this is a positive change. At least the discussion is starting. Several cloud service providers already are starting to document a multi-cloud strategy. So I think that's positive to address this disconnect between the cloud service provider and the enterprise, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, and we need more products, more platforms, much quicker in the marketplace than what we have today in order to solve this problem long term and with scale.
Jimmy, can you discuss what Verge is doing today to address intelligent IT management for now and for the future?
Thank you, Fernando. Yeah, let me talk briefly about that. Verge builds intelligent IT products for the enterprise. That's kind of what we do. Our first product, our flagship product today is SentientDB that provides database management automation that's AI driven. It manages all database assets across the enterprise with a federated or unified management model in a single console, as if all of them were in one virtual data center. We take actions to prevent, resolve, and mitigate performance and workload issues before they happen, in real time, at runtime, as workloads are being processed with zero downtime, right? We provide what we call true cloud convergence management, and that is managing many clouds as one cloud with 100% transaction consistency anywhere on the globe. And we are cloud provider agnostic, and we are hardware machine independent, providing self-management and self-healing services that actually make zero downtime possible. Our next product is on the drawing boards, and we've started on it. Is the ability to provide these same services for applications as well as databases, right? Call it Sentient App, right? We started out with data because we felt that data was probably the most important thing to the enterprise. It's how they are competitive. It's how they run their operations. It's how they make money. And we felt that we would focus with database management as our first product, and then bridge to provide those same services for applications. Databases are a complex animal. They're a stateful machine, right? You can't miss a transaction. You've got to be right on, right, all the time. So database management was complex, was difficult, but we had the skill sets within our company to solve that problem. And then now being able to provide those services to non-stateful machines such as applications is probably our next step. And with the third step being an actual, what I'm going to call IT arbitrage, where where you have your applications and databases within a certain service provider, some in this, some in that, and for whatever reason, cost, quality, service levels, QoS factors, you decide you need to move those applications and databases to another vendor, then we can just pick them up and move them wherever on the planet you want them to be and set them down with zero downtime. So those are kind of the future, if you would. Question as to what's next, right? And what are we planning next year, and what are we planning for the year after that? So those would be where we are today and the value that we can bring to the enterprise today.
I think also what we wanted to do was to share a URL so that everybody here can, find out a little bit more about this. So it's www.carahsoft.com. That's carahsoft.com/Verge technologies. So carahsoft.com/Verge technologies. If you want to find out more about SentientDB and what Verge Technologies does.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests, Jimmy Job, Mohit Narayanan, and Fernando Labastida. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Caracast, and be sure to listen to our other discussions. If you'd like more information on how Verge Technologies can assist your organization, please visit www.carasoft.com or email us at vergemarketing@carasoft.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.